All right, so if you caught my day by day video, you might have know that I mentioned doing this video about my cat Alani. She is a therapy cat. She is actually on my lease as a therapy cat. That's why I can have her at this apartment. Um, Basically, what happened was when I lived with my mom and ex-stepdad in 2009 to 2010, and it was a rough environment for me. But my psychiatrist noted what was making it kind of okay was that we had three cats: Zoe, Tiffany, and Callie. Zoe was my cat, and then Tiffany was her sister and my mom's cat, and then Callie was my brother's cat, and he wasn't able to have cats at his place, so Callie stayed there. She was eventually adopted out because my ex-stepdad didn't like her, because Zoe and Tiffany weren't huge fans of her either. But Zoe and Tiffany would sometimes follow me into the bathroom because I used to self-injure. I haven't in 15 years. At least not with the devices I was using. Do I still scratch myself? Yeah. Nowadays, though, when I give scritchies to Alani. So, but I got a notice in 2014 from him, please let Renee have a therapy cat. My landlord at the time protested, said he was allergic to cats, therefore I can't have one. I didn't know my rights back then. If I had known my rights, I probably would have been able to have Callie. But then if I had ended up with Callie, I wouldn't have ended up with Alani. So, as unfortunate was as losing Callie, because she was this little ball of energy. She had these little fuzzy balls, and you would throw them, and she would come back kind of like a dog with the ball in her mouth. She would bug me if she felt I was being too despondent or spending too long on my laptop, and she was just a sweet little girl. Not that Zoe and Tiffany weren't sweet. Zoe would, kind of follow me around. I actually have a picture somewhere of her sitting in my suitcase when I would go back to college. But I had to drop out of college for financial and mental health reasons. When I moved into my apartment in 2017, it was determined I wasn't quite stable enough to have a cat. So it took a while for me to, build trust and have the financial means, because for a while there I was working as a volunteer even though I was getting paid. And so every bit of money I was getting was, basically for, paying my energy bills and stuff like that. Having clothes for work, paying for stuff for at work and that sort of thing. I don't even remember what I really bought with that money. I probably started getting streaming services back then. I don't remember. That was a bad time. If I had had a cat, that probably would have been better. But in 2020, it was determined, I finally had, stability in my job. Granted, I hated that job, and I really, really needed a therapy cat at that point. I think that was part of the breaking point, was that I was having a very difficult time at my job, and I needed a cat. So, got everything set up, and on August 2nd, 2020, I went to the Humane Society, saw three cats. One was too interested in toys. One was very skittish. The male cat I saw was okay, but I wasn't sure on him. And when I come in and I mentioned, needing kind of a cuddler, they had mentioned a cat named Alani, who was in with the kittens because she had a litter and still had her nips. So they were suckling her even though she didn't have any milk. And she came in and it was game over. Since I had pre-registered, I was able to take her home that day. I had wanted to name her Braylee, which means hope. But, Alani seemed to fit her. So we were initially told that she was 2.5. That is not the case. She was actually a little over a year old. The reason why they thought she was older was because she had had a litter. But when they had to pull her bottom teeth, they determined that she was 2 2.5 at that point. So, yeah. Basically, when I was working fast food, I would get very anxious. It did get to a point where during COVID, um, we didn't have the inside of the restaurant open. We were just doing through the window, through the drive-through. And I would most often be on headset, which was stressful enough sometimes. But sometimes they would shift me over to window. And towards the end there, I remember having panic attacks. And I remember calling my psychiatrist's office crying, like, I can't do this, I can't do this. So they actually gave me a note saying that she can't be on window anymore. And not long after that, I switched jobs. But, even though, I've switched jobs now, I still have days. Like, I had a lot of times where the highlight of my day after work would be coming home and possibly seeing Alani in the window or having her waiting at the door for me because I was so stressed out. Now it's like she'll be waiting at the door for me all the time, and she's just a sweet girl. So sometimes if I'm having a bad day, just knowing that she'll be there when I get home, I mean, that makes it so much better. And like, I have a Wise camera, so I'll check on her during my breaks. So, and if I don't check on her during break, then she won't be at the door when I come home. So it's kind of like a punishment if I don't check on her. But she tolerates some of the stuff I do. Like, I like putting her in costumes. That was actually one of my fellow DBT people's fault on that one, because my dad wasn't going to be able to come over for Halloween stuff, and they were like, well, why don't you dress up Alani for Halloween? And so I've been doing that every year since 2020. She has 5 Halloween costumes now. She does have her favorites. Since the mermaid one and the pumpkin one and her Tinkerbell one have the Velcro here and here from that are similar to her harness, she prefers those 3. Another thing that kind of helps me sometimes is when I go out for a walk. I don't like going for a walk on my own necessarily. It just feels weird. I'm so used to, when I was younger, I would go on walks with my dad and we would talk the whole time. But what I do now, when it's nice out, it's 30 degrees out at this point, so we're done for the season. I have a stroller, and I take her to the park, and then I let her out of the stroller, and I'll let her walk around on her harness for 30 minutes to an hour. And I kind of like enjoy sharing her. I mean, that brings me so much joy to share her with other people. Like last week, I took her to my work because in the event that for some reason grandma isn't able to take us to the vet, I needed to make sure that she'd be okay on the bus. And instead of taking her in her carrier, which would have been a heck of a lot easier, I took her in her stroller and I put her in her Tinkerbell costume, and everybody at my work oohed and awed over her. I work at a grocery store in the floral department, and I just happened to be going to get my meds that day. So, yeah. So you'll probably end up seeing Alani around. Especially if I'm stressed out, I'll probably end up grabbing her. But since this is a health channel, I wanted to talk about one of the things that help with my health, and that is Alani. So I've got another video coming. Actually, I have a couple videos coming because I'm behind. So I will see you later. Bye.